Hey, welcome to the show. Today we're going to talk about the big picture plan about what is this new financial system going to look like and why is it necessary in the first place? My goal here is to connect a bunch of dots between what happened like after World War II, why does that matter now? Why can't we just fix it? And what is the next system going to look like? You can put all these pieces together and figure out like what's going to happen. And I want to know why, so that we're going to cover that too. Then you can prepare for it and look for opportunities to take advantage of it because it's going to be a big change in cool ways. And those of us who are forward thinking and anticipating this, I think are going to have some pretty cool opportunities around the board. Hey, welcome to the show. I'm Molly Elmore. Today we're going to talk about the big picture of where this whole global financial system is going. Even if you're not in finance or like doing a lot of investing, this is going to affect everything. I mean, if you buy stuff at a store or you have a job and you're getting paid in a currency, like if you have a retirement account, I mean, there's all these sort of dimensions to interacting with the monetary system. If you participate in the economy in some capacity, there's going to be some big changes here. And trying to anticipate those in a non-like dramatic fear, crazy way is challenging. Like, I'm not a psychic. I don't have a time travel device, although I really would like one. So mapping out what do we know? What are the sort of breadcrumbs that have been left for us helps sort of map, create this plan, I think, of what's going to happen. Lots of people have their own theories, and you could spend all day long on Twitter looking for forecasts as to what the next financial system will look like. Some have a very dark dystopian worry that there's going to be this very oppressive, sort of feudalist type structure where we live in these central bank digital currencies world where all your money is programmed and you can't thrive and eat meat and you have to eat bugs. I think that is, I've been down that fear channel quite a few times. I don't think that's going to happen. There's just way too many problems with implementing that plan. Nobody wants it. And the extremely small percentage of people who want it seem to be losing credibility at a dramatically rapid pace. Like, no one's going to pay attention to those people. A lot of duping went on in 2020. People unexpectedly were pushed into doing things like closing their business that I think if we were to go through that type of thing again, I don't expect the same outcome. Now, maybe that's wishful thinking, but I think we've seen a global change and an awakening in some capacity that we're not headed down that pathway. So let's say we're going towards a cool, good thing. What does that look like? What's going to change? We've covered a lot of these things in this channel about asset-backed currencies and, what do I think? I did an interview with Josh Barbin about some of the topics we're going to cover today, but I wanted to just summarize them in a shorter video to give you the highlights about where is this going. Okay, first we have to look back a little bit, World War II. There was a problem after World War II in that a lot of the world was broken. Europe and Japan were devastated. Tons of damage from war. Sometimes there's people in the banking world maybe who like that because then they can issue all these loans to rebuild and make a bunch of money off the interest. There was a situation, though, that the financial system at the time wasn't really sufficient to enable all of the trade required to rebuild. You had all these countries. The U.S. had no damage, minimal damage from the war. Lots of manufacturing, lots of food production, lots of stuff being made in the U.S. that could be exported to other countries in Europe and Japan. Similarly, Europe and Japan wanted to rebuild generally by making stuff that they could then sell to the United States. So we wanted this vibrant trade system. And in order to do that, you got to pay for the stuff. And so two proposals were put forth, somewhat similar, about how to enable trade. One was called the Bancor Plan, and one is the one we actually got, which is the IMF SDR. But the essence of this plan was, you know what? We're going to have this centralized global financial institution called the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, with the World Bank, and they're going to be tasked with creating this reserve asset. I guess this actually came quite a few years later, but the idea was that the dollar would be the primary currency for payments. We would have fixed exchange rates, and this SDR that came into play later is kind of used as a way to make trade transactions between countries that export more than they import and those who import more than they export. There's kind of some fancy accounting going on with how this SDR is like issued and traded with each other, and there's this sort of interest payments that go on. And this SDR topic has become very popular recently because the XRP community is curious if the asset will become the new SDR. I'm actually now at the place where I don't think it will, because I don't think it's necessary. And I'll get to that in a minute. Now, what happened as a result of World War II and the plan that was put into place was that the dollar became the money around the world. And the Federal Reserve, the Central Bank of the United States, the Federal Reserve, is kind of in charge of this asset. Let's use crypto chain terms. They're in charge of this monetary asset called the dollar, and they have a mechanism where they can issue reserves to banks, and then those banks can issue money in the form of loans to people. You can also deposit your money in there, and you can earn interest in a savings account. They had this sort of system going on. But what happened was all these other countries started to get paid in dollars, because that's what the decision was, is everything is going to be in dollars. They had this profit in dollars, and they took out loans in dollars. There's a whole lot of banking going on in the world outside of the US banking system in dollars. And it kind of grew like this animal, like it grew out of control. There are now more dollars outside of the US banking system than there are inside. So if you went to the Fed, which has happened, and they're like, hey, inflation's out of control, we need you to fix it. The Fed has been printing so much money. That's actually not really true. Like, the Fed has printed money, but way more money has been printed outside of the US banking system via what's called the Eurodollar market, which has nothing to do with the euro currency. It's simply when banks that aren't regulated by US rules can issue loans and basically print dollars out of nothing. And it massively increases the supply of dollars. And when you have the power to just print money, like, you can do lots of shady things. You can influence people. You can build armies. Like, you can do all sorts of things that maybe aren't in the interests of humanity. So this sort of monster got created by this Eurodollar market. And amusingly enough, crypto, which was sort of presented as this like anti-banking thing, like we're rebelling against the traditional banking system, woohoo, introduced this idea called a stable coin. And a stable coin is basically the Eurodollar market on the blockchain. And what I mean by that is it is a way to mint dollars outside of the US banking system. So they are dollars that exist in the economy that the Federal Reserve System has no control over. So this is a problem for the Fed. Now, I'm not like a fan of the Fed, like whatever. But they have one product, the dollar, and their job in their worldview is to manage their product. I don't think they want their product to die, but their product has gotten out of control and is being printed by entities that do not report to them. They can manage banks in the US. They can tell Citibank, hey, you got to do this thing. You got to park your money here at our little storage thing called the reverse repo facility. So, they have these tools that they can use to control the supply of money within the US. They have no say over what a stablecoin issuer like Tether does, or what happens in these Eurodollar banks, which are, interestingly enough, in the Caribbean, many of them, but they're all over the world. So by raising the rates, interest rates, the Fed is actually damaging this Eurodollar market substantially. And the idea is that this current system of dollar dominance can't continue for like a lot of reasons. And the interesting irony of it is that the Fed, who's in charge of it, appears to not want it to continue either. Like, they're not fighting this change because Jerome Powell has publicly stated there is room in the world for more than one reserve currency. And that means that the dollar being everything, it's just not manageable. Now, other countries also don't like this either, because what happens is that the dollar has led to the U.S. military policing the world. And U.S. politics have become a weapon that is used to sanction and punish countries that don't necessarily want to be subservient to this particular agenda. And people don't like that anymore. It's also unfair that, lots of countries can't print dollars, even though this sort of Eurodollar thing has fascinatingly enabled that. And so a lot of other countries like Russia and China have to actually make stuff to print money, and it becomes unfair. So it doesn't serve everyone's, and it serves a very small group of people's interest to have the dollar be the only global reserve currency. I find it fascinating too when people get mad at me about bringing that up, that like, I think it'd be great if the dollar was not the only reserve currency. And that's sort of viewed as this like unpatriotic viewpoint. And I ask them, like, what on earth do you think is the benefit? They're like, strong dollar is strong for America. I'm like, I live in like a very rural area where back, a couple decades ago, manufacturing was a major employer of people. A lot of hardworking people were supported financially by the big trade industries in this area. I mean, like carpets, a ton of carpet mills around here, they're all gone. It was like a big HVAC machine thing, whatever parts thing here. All of that's gone. It's moved overseas because the dollar became so strong, it didn't financially make sense to manufacture products here. Now, we moved that stuff overseas, and there's certainly been consequences for a lot of these countries to take all this manufacturing on. But the system that we have now, like, it doesn't benefit everybody. So let's say we decided that's done. We're not going to have this one global reserve currency anymore that is issued by a nation. So what does this new system look like? Let's say, for argument's sake, the XRP ledger becomes this new global marketplace. So a virtual marketplace. You don't physically have to go to anywhere. It lives on the blockchain, which means that transactions can be processed very, very quickly. And most importantly, the payment can be settled instantly. That's the biggest difference between any system that existed before, is that I could make a deal with you quickly and you could agree to make the payment quickly, but the money moved fairly slowly. And it used this system called Nostro Vostro accounts, meaning I had to have, if I was a bank, first of all, if I was a small bank, I was kind of screwed. If I was a big bank, I had to create all of these bank accounts or branches all around the globe and park money in there to facilitate these transactions. I mean, it worked, but it was expensive. A lot of money was sitting around doing nothing, waiting, being underutilized, you could say. And a lot of entities that didn't have the means to have these Nostro Vostro accounts were beholden to these correspondent banks, and they had to pay these fees. Now, the people who loved this system, though, well, I guess not. It was a mixed blessing. I mean, if you were the correspondent bank, then you got to charge these fees, and you don't really have to do a lot of work. It's not like a hard job to do that, but they had to lock up these funds. So there were drawbacks to it. So let's say we move away from that, and now we have this blockchain-based system. You could have tons and tons of systems, but it's kind of like if you were to have tons of tiny, tiny shopping centers. Yeah, that works, but then it's kind of a pain. You don't know which shopping center has which. What if instead you could have this one global marketplace where there were no politics, no country was in charge, and you could go with your currency and swap it for anything else. Sorry, you could buy whatever thing you want to buy, oil, food, things that are traded on the global marketplace. You could pay for it in your currency, and the person who received it, the seller, got it in their currency. I mean, that's sort of the whole deal, and that's why the dollar had to be the global reserve currency for so long, because there was no mechanism to allow people to easily trade from one currency to another very quickly and easily. So it was like, well, if we can't really have this exchange process, why don't we all just pay for stuff in the same thing to make this problem kind of go away? Now they've obviously banned national currencies forever, and people hold their own national currencies and use them, but I'm kind of talking at this global trade level, which, affects a lot of things. Like nations have to take out loans in dollars, and they are given bailouts in dollars. A lot of things have just been done in dollars. So let's say we don't need that anymore. Every country has their own currency. If they decide to move them to new monetary systems like asset-backed currencies, that would be cool. The nations are free to do whatever it is they choose. And then they go to this marketplace. They get an exchange rate set up with XRP. Then XRP becomes this bridge currency. We often think about XRP as a use case for cross-border payments. And that's part of it, but think about all the trade in the world, right? It's not just from one country to another. It's within countries. It also is not just sort of like nation to nation trade or bank to bank payments. There could be person to person payments. There could be person to company purchases. One massive way that time is traded is via payroll. I mean, think about how many people in the world have a job, they get paid. That's kind of trading. Like, I'll trade you my time and you're going to give me money for it. How are we going to facilitate that? Let's say you have companies that have people employed in other countries, which is the case with a lot of global corporations. Could all of this be done? I mean, think about all the situations or examples where money has changed hands. What if that was just done in one very efficient, organized global marketplace? It kind of sounds a little bit hard to imagine because it would require pretty cool technology to do that. And that's why a lot of people are extremely bullish on the XRP ledger and very confident that it has that capability to do that, which is neat, because having this one system that runs flawlessly and supports all of these transactions, it frees the military from having to police this stuff. Now, you still have, I guess, goods being shipped around the globe that have to be kept safe. Countries now don't have to answer to one nation issuing the global reserve currency. This issue of the Triffin dilemma, meaning that if I want to manufacture goods and export them, I don't have to sacrifice that from being the issuer of the global currency. And so this whole kind of power grab, this whole sort of struggle over who's in charge as we move to this new monetary system, it kind of goes away. One thing that when I first heard about the shift away from the dollar, was there was an assumption that there would be another national currency that would take over. People had speculated that it would be China and that the Chinese currency would become the next global reserve currency. I don't think that solves any problems for anybody. China now would have a problem, and we've now shifted this sort of political authority role to China. So I'm now pretty confident that we're going to see many, many currencies in the world. Honestly, we could have thousands of them. If you've ever been to an exchange like Pancake Swap, I haven't been on there in a while because I've not been doing a lot of trading on there, but the idea is that I could show up and trade one currency for any other one as long as I was willing to go through like the cake token. The cake token doesn't really have much inherent value. I don't really care about it, but I was able to use it as a bridge currency to swap whatever I had to that, and then from that to the other asset I wanted to buy. Now, the difference, though, is that this Pancake Swap exchange is very small in scale, not a whole lot of stuff going on there. And I wasn't planning on a long-term viewpoint about using Pancake Swap as my place to swap things. But let's say that was not true. Let's say Pancake Swap was going to be the thing, and I knew that I'm kind of getting a deal on cake now. If I were to hold a bunch of cake over time, my exchanges would be cheaper, because as the value of cake goes up for more and more adoption, which just happened organically, I would have locked my supply in at a lower rate. So this is one of the arguments about why XRP could also be a store of value. As more and more people kind of catch on that this will have a lot of adoption, it'll seem like, you know what, maybe I should hold on to some of this. I could store my wealth here in the meantime, knowing that the price is going to go up. I did cover this in a video a couple days ago about this virtuous cycle idea. But let's just assume that the entire global marketplace now supports all of these transactions. It's all done on the XRP ledger. Or, you know what, it could be potentially on another ledger. I just don't see another contender that has the technical capability or the relationships with banks and countries. But could happen. So all of this stuff is done in the global marketplace. We don't need things like SDRs. So this is I can't see a need for basket currencies, including the BRICS reserve basket currency. I've done a bunch of videos on it, how the reserve basket currency would work for that. And recently heard somebody telling me that they're having a lot of trouble with it. And I can't remember who told me that there's a lot of squabbling about how it would be arranged, like what the percentages are for each nation's contribution, because those are subjective and debatable and political. So you now have this new problem where you have another political problem entering the global exchange rate. So let's just say there's no more basket currencies and you just have each nation issuing their own sovereign currency. They can back it by assets so that they feel like it can't be inflated, or it's a good store value for their citizens and for the sovereign wealth. And then every time they want to buy something, they just go out and exchange it through this global marketplace. The only thing I could see these basket currencies working for is some kind of loan situation where if I don't have enough money or have enough assets to buy what I need to buy and I have to borrow that money, what would I borrow that in? I can't borrow. I don't know how that would work if I could borrow in my own currency from another entity and who these loan issuers would be. So that's sort of the part of this puzzle I'm still kind of figuring out, is how does the loan side of it work? And maybe that is where basket currencies kind of play a role. But traditionally, the SDR was set up somewhat for loans, but primarily for trade. So that if I produced more stuff than I consumed, was it sort of a surplus nation, I could take that wealth in the SDRs and I could then trade it for purchases in the future. So I think the big picture is away from this single system, which we kind of know, moving towards this blockchain-based money. The Eurodollar market then becomes less relevant because you don't need to be borrowing all of these dollars or any other currency outside of a nation. So right now, people in like France are using the Eurodollar market. Well, they wouldn't need to do that anymore. It would kind of go away. They would be running their own stuff in their own sovereign currency. So this need for currencies to be issued outside of a nation's borders goes away. And that's one of the big problems we have with this inflation and some of the money being printed for illicit bad uses. That type of thing goes away if we no longer have this separation. We simply have sovereign nations issuing sovereign currencies. Hopefully we won't need to go through a war situation to reinstitute a new monetary policy. That sadly has happened in history, that in order to get a new system, you have to go through a real rough time. We see some indicators that we've kind of are in war, and there's certainly war going on in Europe. Hopefully we can get all of this stuff in place and implemented before there is kind of a tragedy. And then the interesting question too, that I also talked about in that virtuous cycle video, is whether or not AI technology could start to take over and control these markets in a more managed way. Like right now we have central banks that issue monetary policy. There's humans doing it. They are susceptible to corruption. AI is not that different than saying we're just going to have smart contracts manage monetary policy. Now, I saw the Terminator movies. I'm aware that Skynet is kind of a scary thing that we don't want to have happen. So if we were in a position to make sure that the AI was a benevolent AI, like it didn't want to ultimately harm humanity, then we could be in this situation where AI does the work. They take care of it. They're free of politics. They don't really care about our human significance needs and power struggles and greed. They just sort of look at this big picture and like a robot just fix problems as they see them and keep it all peaceful and smooth. And so it would be a little bit of a centralized system because AI would probably be one entity that would manage it. But this is kind of a neat idea, I think, about where this is all headed. One global marketplace, many, many currencies, no more dollar dominance, the ability to trade for anything in any currency and have it settled immediately using blockchain kind of frees a lot of the nation from politics that gets ugly and messy. Now, I think this evolution to a new system has been in place or being prepared for a long time. And there's been a power grab. So I think we're seeing a lot of tension in the last couple of years, this whole great reset, terror marketing. I think that the financial elite, I don't like that label, but we'll just use that. They knew this was coming and are like, this is going to hurt our monopoly. We need to stop this, or at least get some control mechanisms in place before we move to this new system. That's why they've been implementing some of their crazy lunacy control mechanisms, but it's just not working. I think that we're just going to push them aside and move on. So I'm pretty optimistic about where this is going. I think we're going to see some very cool things with blockchain technology. The idea of everything being tokenized is a neat, fascinating idea. And there'll be a tremendous amount of opportunities for people who figured that out early to take advantage of that. Hope that there'll be a little bit more income equality around the world, as we don't have this situation where the dollar is just so strong and every other currency is so weak that those countries can't afford to buy anything because it's just too expensive for their citizens. Be nice to see a little bit more fairness and equality in that capacity. So, all right. If you found this helpful, please like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video. Also, one thing is, if you like to watch these videos but don't like the ads, I get that. YouTube's thing. Thankfully for YouTube for providing this platform for us. I do host all of these videos on my locals channel for our supporters, and there's no ads in them. So you have another option if you like to watch these videos and would prefer to have an ad-free experience. All right, I'll see you in the next one.